Welcome back to my Python series for beginners. This is where we break down the basics of Python for AI and machine learning, fast, efficient, and straight to the point. No endless tutorials, no binge watching, just what you need to start coding and learning by doing. As always, you'll find timestamps in the description so you can jump right to what matters most. Speaking of saving time, today's episode is all about loops, your secret weapon for handling repetitive tasks like a pro. Let's dive in. A loop is a programming structure that allows you to repeat a block of code multiple times. Loops help in automating repetitive tasks without writing the same code again and again. Python provides two types of loops, for loops and while loops. But how are they different and when to use each one? A for loop is perfect when you already know how many times you want to repeat an action. Instead of writing the same code multiple times, a for loop does the work for you, automating repetition in a clean and efficient way. Let's say you want to print hello 5 times. Instead of writing print hello 5 times, you can easily use for loop to make the job. It might look a bit confusing at first, so let's break it down. Range 5 create a sequence of numbers from 0 to 4, and this means the loop will run 5 times because there are 5 numbers in the sequence. The I is a loop variable that takes one number at a time and runs the code inside the indented block, which in our case is the print function. In this sequence we have first, I equals 0, so the print function will run first time. Then the loop is repeated, so this time I equals 1, and the print function runs once again. The same process repeats until the last element in the sequence is reached, causing the print function to run a total of 5 times. Instead of manually writing the print function 5 times, we write it once and tell Python how many times to execute it using the range built-in function in combination with a for loop. In this example, I used the loop variable I, but since it's just a variable, you can choose any name that makes sense for you, like x, y, count, or anything else. In a future video, I'll dive deeper into Python's built-in functions. But since there's such a wide variety, today I'll keep things focused and to the point. Counting isn't the only thing a for loop can do. It can also iterate through lists, tuples, pandas data frames, and much more. Let's take another example. We've created a list called fruits that contains apple, banana, and cherry. Now, we want to print each fruit inside the list in the simplest way possible. Can you think of how to do that? If you want to try it yourself, pause for a moment and give it a shot. Here's how we do it. Just like in the counting example, we first use the magic word for, then specify the condition. In this case, we're looping through each element in the list. Since we named the list fruits, we'll use fruits in our loop. The loop variable can be named each underscore element, but to make it clearer, let's name it fruit. After all, it makes sense that each item in the list represents a fruit. You can choose whatever name works best for you, though, just make it something easy to understand. Finally, inside the indented block, we write the action we want to take. In this case, print fruit to print each fruit in the list. It might not seem too exciting right now, especially since it still involves a bit of work and replacing the print function won't save us much time. But in real-life scenarios, we often work with thousands of rows of data and data frames. Instead of manually sifting through the data to find rows where certain conditions are met, we can use a for loop to automate this process. For example, instead of navigating through a database and checking each student's score to see if it's above 85, we can write a simple for loop to go through each row in the data frame. Inside the loop, we can build more complex actions. If a student's score is above 85, we could print the student's information, create a new list of top-performing students, or even organize them into a separate group. The possibilities are endless. If this feels a bit complicated right now, don't worry. This is completely normal at your level. But you are on the right track, and in just a couple of weeks, you'll be able to iterate through thousands of rows in less than a second. This example is just to give you an idea of the real power of for loops and how they can help you handle large amounts of data more efficiently. A while loop is another type of loop in Python, but it works a little differently than the for loop. While loops are used when we don't know exactly how many times we need to repeat an action, but we know the condition that should stop the loop. The loop keeps running as long as the condition is true, and it will stop once the condition becomes false. When should you use a while loop? Think of a while loop as something that keeps repeating an action until a specific goal is reached or until a condition is no longer true. If you don't know how many times you'll need to repeat the action, but you do know what should stop it, the while loop is the way to go. For example, imagine you are playing a game where you need to guess a number. You don't know how many guesses it will take, but you will keep guessing until you get it right. In this case, a while loop is perfect because you don't know how many guesses, but you know that once you guess correctly, the loop should stop. Here's how you can do this in Python. We start with guess equals -1, or any other incorrect guess, and a while loop that runs as long as the guess is not equal to the correct number. Other words, as long as our condition is true. In this scenario, the loop keeps running until the user guesses the right number, 7. Every time the guess is not equal to the correct number, it prints oops, that's not it. Try again, and repeat the process by asking again to choose a number. When the guess is correct, it prints congratulations, you guessed the right number, and the loop stops because the condition, guess not equals correct number, is no longer true. Be careful. If you forget to update the condition in the loop, the condition may always stay true. This will cause the loop to run forever, known as an infinite loop. For example, if you forget to update the question side while loop, the loop will run forever or until you type Ctrl+C keys. To avoid this, always make sure your loop is progressing and the condition will eventually turn false, stopping the loop. Another useful example is a countdown timer. Imagine you need to set a timer that counts down from 10 and stops when it reaches 0. The number of seconds to count down is not fixed by a range, but you know that the countdown must stop when it hits 0. Here's how you could do this with a while loop. Initial setup. We start with a countdown variable and set it to 10. While loop condition. In this case, the while loop needs to continue running as long as the countdown is greater than 0. Action. With each iteration, the countdown is first printed, then its value decreases by 1. Stopping condition. The loop will only stop when the countdown reaches 0, at which point the condition becomes false, and the loop exits. Final message. After the loop stops, we print a time's up message. Example number 3. Keep asking for valid input. Sometimes, when you ask a user for input, you want to keep asking them until they give you a valid response. This is another scenario where a while loop is perfect. In this example, we'll use a while loop to keep asking the user for their name until they enter something valid, a name with more than 2 characters. This is a simple case where we don't know how many attempts it will take, but we know the condition to stop. Initial setup. We start with an empty string. While loop condition. The loop keeps asking for input until the condition is true. Length of the name is greater than 2. Action. Inside the loop, we prompt the user to enter their name using input function, and we update the name variable on the same time to avoid infinite loop. Stopping condition. Once the user types a name with more than 2 characters, the condition becomes false, and the loop stops. Final message. After the loop stops, we print a thank you message with the user's name. Let's recapitulate the main takeaways for Python loops. A while loop is used when you don't know how many times you need to repeat something, but you know when to stop. Be cautious about creating infinite loops by forgetting to update the loop condition. Use while loops when the action depends on a condition, like waiting for user input or counting down to 0. A for loop is ideal when you know in advance how many times you need to repeat an action, typically used with ranges, lists, or other iterable objects. It automatically handles incrementing or iterating through elements, making it concise and easy to use for tasks like processing each item in a list or iterating over a range of numbers. For loops are great for cases where you need to perform a task a specific number of times or loop through elements like strings, lists, or dictionaries without needing to manually update the loop condition. Watching tutorials alone won't take you far, but practicing will. So, whenever you're ready, grab your cup of coffee or tea, grab the exercises, and get started. In the description below, you have 2 methods to get the exercises. First method, navigate to my GitHub link, click on Download, unzip the archive, and then simply drag and drop the entire folder into VS Code. Second method, join my Discord server, head to the practice section, and download the zip file. Again, unzip it and drag and drop the folder into VS Code. In the Explorer tab, which you can open and close by clicking the first icon, you'll find a folder called Day, followed by the learning day we are in. Inside this folder, there are 3 subfolders. The first one is called Exercises, and I recommend you get started with this right away. The second folder is called Recap, and I suggest you wait until tomorrow to go through it. Giving your brain some time to process everything you've learned today will help reinforce your understanding. In fact, studies show that sleep plays a huge role in consolidating new information, so sleeping on it could help you recall the concepts more easily the next day. The third folder is for after a short break. Take a day off before tackling the next set of exercises. This will give your mind a chance to recharge and come back with fresh energy. Taking breaks in between learning sessions is really beneficial for long-term retention and keeping motivation high. Don't worry, when you get back, the exercises will be a little more challenging and will need a bit more research, but I'm confident you'll do great. You'll also have lots of hints along the way to guide you through. And remember, if you ever need help, don't hesitate to reach out to me in the Discord channel. I'm always happy to support you as you progress.